Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
I'm Eric.
and we're gonna have a blood-sucking good time tonight as we look at the new horror comedy Renfield, which is a version of Dracula, this time played by one Nicolas Cage. And then we will wrap up by looking at a couple of other people who played Dracula, including one that said it was presented by Wes Craven, who probably rolls over in his grave thinking that his name is attached to it. But we'll get to Dracula 2000 in good time. First, Eric, Renfield out there. This time last year we had Nicolas Cage playing a version of himself in a movie that was surprisingly engaging and very funny. So I had some high hopes for this one. The trailers with him and Nicholas Hoult and Awkwafina are pretty first rate. But did you like the movie?
Okay, you really want me to go first on this one?
Yeah.
So, around last year this time, like you said, we had Nicolas Cage playing the internet's idea of himself. And he seems to have gotten on board with what people expect from him entertainment-wise. Then he tackled one of three characters, Dracula, Captain Nemo, and another dream role of his that he always wanted to do. And this is his Dracula, his goal. And you know what? He is great and also the least interesting thing about the movie. And to me, and you know what? Okay. So if I told you that there was going to be a crime drama that brings the concept of Dracula from the original 1930s movie into the modern day by slipping him into a Godfather-esque crime family that protects him and against legions and whatnot, and there was a whole epic saga of a police officer that's trying to keep clean in an age where her father was the only clean cop who fell in like a LA-filled crime-ridden world. And at the center of it all is Dracula's henchman Renfield, who is trying to find a way to like make himself be at peace with the wrongs of his past and deal with the manipulation of all of it. Would you think you could get through all that in an hour and a half going as quickly as possible? Because you can't. We've proven that you can't digest all of that type of story in an hour and a half. And that makes everything about this movie that is so great for how over the top and hard they go for it feel flat and frustrating sometimes that they can't do it. It's like someone had an idea for a crime drama Dracula movie. And someone told them, well, if you're going to do Dracula and you're going to do vampires, what's hot right now is What We Do in the Shadows. They did a quick Google search of the posters for the TV show of What We Do in the Shadows and thought, okay, well, that's how we'll make it look punchy and actiony. And this thing was birthed that goes... We literally saw a guy get his face torn off. Okay, a human being literally and applause for that. Totally unnecessary for the story you're telling, but they went for it. And oh man, I am split down the middle to the point that I have to say I'm neutral on this. I'm not a thumbs up or a thumbs down because like everything I love about like his weird mishmexed California accent and whatnot take on Dracula from Nicolas Cage to Nicholas Hoult, who always goes above and beyond. No matter what, like ever since like Jack the Giant Slayer and with X-Men and with all the things that he does, he just seems to just kick it into high gear. Awkwafina was not just playing Awkwafina like in Shang-Chi and some of the other things she's been in. So I thought she was great. I loved particularly
Ben Schwartz.
Ben Schwartz. I always try to remember him from Middleditch Schwartz, but I can never remember the first name. It's Ben Schwartz. Yes. He had some of the funniest lines in fight sequences and things like that through there. I laughed. I didn't cry, but I completely forgot it was an action movie. And then I was blown away with some of the stunt work. And then I was like, you don't need to be doing all this, but then they did it anyways. And I was like,
Whew. I agree with you. It was a lot. And it was a lot. it's only 93 minutes, which isn't enough to explore all that, but also it felt like it was taking forever at times, which is a testament to them not doing any of it well. Unfortunately, like the funniest sequences in the film, some of which actually don't even make the final cut, are what you get in the trailer, which was a little bit of a bummer. I would have liked some more of the idea that Renfield's going to this support group and is initially going to the support group as a way of finding like victims, but then the message ends up seeping in and he tries to change his life, and the sense of pacing and time was very difficult to figure out. And they're so poor they have to live in an abandoned hospital, but somehow he rented like an apartment and bought a whole new wardrobe. We never really see him doing a job. There were a whole lot of questions I had, and you're right, like Nicolas Cage, I was thrilled for the casting. I thought the look was really interesting. I thought sometimes he was interesting, but he's a background player in this movie. The the organized crime didn't work for me. Like the idea was fine,
Fair.
but didn't totally work. And I don't understand, how the idea of familiars work then, how he could make all of them familiars and how they were fighting each other at the end. It was a total carnage bloodbath at times. They were going for comedy at times. They introduced a sister for Aquafina's character just as, I mean, her character name might have been plot device, and that would have made more sense because that was kind of how it goes at the end. I'm with you. I give it thumbs neutral. I didn't hate it, but I thought there was so much potential. And actually, I would have been happier, I guess, in retrospect, seeing the whole thing. They had to have some of these other plots to pull to make Aquafina's character sort of relevant. But you don't get a sense of those other plots from the trailer, and I still could see how she was going to be part of it. I was more into the relationship between Dracula and Renfield, which you start out focused on that, but then sort of like falls by the wayside, and
Gets drop kicked off of the
whole.
second story
I
apartment
also
building.
had a real hard time with the twist ending of what happens to his group friends.
That
Like, where was the passage of time? How the heck did that happen?
I was in a. Are you talking? Oh yeah, the very ending twist with them. Yeah. See, to me, so there's two moments. There's when all of them died is when I started to second guess everything in the movie, because I was like, wait, why do things happen? Like, why are we following this one plot thread if we're not going to follow through with this? And why was his whole create his life in an apartment building a 5-second montage, and we're spending a whole bunch of time on
all those motivational posters,
the crime
we
stuff?
never even got to touch on.
There was a YOLO one. I'm like, this is so outdated.
And then he has a wall where he just mapped them all on top of each other, which was hilarious.
Yeah. So, but then there's that second end twist that you're talking about, and that again made me think like there are no rules in this world.
Yeah, and it's almost like the way they did it at the end is to set up for a sequel, but honestly, I'm good.
Yeah. Unless they come back and they set some clear rules, because to be honest, like there's like sometimes he eats a spider and that seems to make him more powerful than someone who ate an ant or some nonsense. But and Ben Schwartz comes back and he seems like of all the familiars, like the boss battle familiar who like takes more.
But also, if Dracula perished, wouldn't that end the? And
in many canons, it would, but
yeah, but
who knows?
Well, and they left themselves an out about whether or not he's actually gone. I wonder too. It says it's based on an original concept story from Robert Kirkman, who did The Walking Dead and a few other things like that. And the crime drama part and the cop part seem very Robert Kirkman-esque, but the humor part and the support group feels like that was whatever this other
It's
writer layered on.
the director is Chris McKay, right?
Um,
No, who's the
I forgot to
director?
look up.
Yeah, Chris McKay. So, he's worked on the Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt, the Lego Batman movie he directed, and then, he was working on one of the writers on there. I feel like it explains that was my gut feeling, was that there was someone had a concept in a drawer of a crime movie that put Dracula at the center of it, right? And then somebody came in and put this flavor of the year on top of it with all the comedy and the colors and everything. And it's very bizarre because with Blumhouse, there were so many people speculating from The Invisible Man that Renfield was going to be their next step into trying to let audiences decide if they were going to have a shared universe.
Mm-hmm.
And this has nothing to do with
Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Moss don't live in the same universe.
No way!
Not in our universe, not in a cinematic universe.
Though it would have been great to see something like when Renfield, if he were to stop eating bugs, he stops seeing the world in an overly saturated way.
Yeah.
That would be something. I don't know. This is the kind of movie.
You couldn't find a more humorless adaptation of a horror film than The Invisible Man. I liked it fine, but there's jokes and then there's whatever the heck's happening there. Elizabeth Moss is capable of jokes, but
yeah,
there was no. I mean, A Handmaid's Tale is funnier than The Invisible Man was. So I mean, there was two different approaches. I just wonder. You're probably right. When I saw it was a story from Robert Kirkman, that gave me a little bit of pause because there's nothing about the previous adaptations of his work that's been done that is super humorous. But then you cite McKay, the director, and the things he's done are humorous. So I'm guessing Ryan Ridley, their other screenwriter, put that, and that. The marketing campaign is very much tilted in one direction. I thought we were getting a comedy. And this is sort of a comedy, but it's also much more of an action over-the-top gore fest than what you might have thought from watching the trailer. Like, there's a hilarious line in the trailer about her talking about bringing the devil Postmates that just doesn't make the movie.
Honestly, from watching the trailer, and sometimes I try not to say these things at risk of like coming across as really dumb or like revealing how I truly am, but I got the impression that Ben Schwartz and Awkwafina were part of the support group, and it was all just Renfield in the support group, and they are all just friends. I guess I didn't watch the trailers really that much either. I mostly watched what scrolled down my Facebook, like when they're pushing things on you. But it just cuts to close-up shots of them saying lines on headshots. And so I didn't know any of what I was prepared for going in here. It was as soon as he pulls up and he's sitting in the car and there's drugs involved, I was like, okay. It's just like,
yeah. Well, and the whole thing weirdly dunks on New Orleans, which I know has its own set of problems, but man, they were dunking on the lawlessness and they have me running a DUI checkpoint at a place where you can get a drive-through daiquiri.
Yes, that line. Oh,
I mean, there were some good lines. There were some really fun moments. The guy who leads the support group, I don't know if you watch the CBS show Ghosts, but I actually really like it. He plays Isaac Higgintoot on British. Ghosts. Yeah, the British, or no, he's the colonial American officer.
Yeah,
but and I loved has a hilarious line in the movie, where he's trying to draw it out. He's like, he won't come to full power. Yes, what a weird way to phrase that, but yes,
yeah.
Or when Dracula's in and he's like, so we're dealing a little bit more narcissism here.
Yeah.
But that scene took like
I
a
love that
weird
stuff.
turn,
Yeah.
and then it became even weirder by what they did at the end.
I would have loved to have seen a simple comedy movie with some action bits. You can take the horror seriously. That helps punch up comedy when you take some things and play it straight. Where it's just Renfield gradually comes to realize he's in the position of power in the relationship, and a thoughtful new direction comes from that. And he's just supported by people. Like, that's it. That's all it had to be.
Well, let's just reflect for a minute. Poor Sheree Agdajlu went from like Academy Award nominee a decade and a half ago to a throwaway part
Who
as
was
the
he?
Mafia Don.
Oh,
She's the Mafia
yeah.
Don.
Man.
Your wall has more texture than her character.
Yes, it does.
So, I mean, it was fun for what it was.
Yeah.
Except for you didn't
I
really know what it was based on how they marketed the movie. If they would have marketed the movie slightly differently, maybe it would have hit differently.
and
But
I just
you're
think
right. It either needed to be a 3-hour grungy deep dive or it needed to be an 89-minute comedy. But being like a 93-minute movie that's 25 minutes of hardcore comedy and like 25 minutes of hardcore action and then a whole lot of plot scenes.
just ideas, just a
Yeah.
whole exposition of one idea, exposition of another idea. I don't know. I'm betting on a rewatch, knowing what it is in advance. I'm still gonna have problems with the pacing, but I think this is like a movie that's like, I know it's not great, but I like it, kind of my jam kind of thing. So
Well, we're going to segue. So Nicolas Cage got his shot at playing Dracula, but he's far from the only one who's ever played the part. There are a ton of people that have played Dracula between actual Dracula films or Nosferatu films, as you mentioned. But we're going to look quickly at 3 of probably the most famous ones, starting with this is a perfect transition. The original, Bela Lugosi, 1931 was the original Dracula film, and it's a perfect transition because if you see Renfield, one of the best things I thought they did in there is an opening montage that gives you a bit of history, and they did some shot-for-shot remakes with Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage dropping in as Dracula and Renfield. And I was delighted. I haven't, it's not like I've seen this film for a long time. Peacock has the classic Universal monsters because they own Universal. And last year, right before Halloween, I watched a bunch of the classic, Frankenstein, Dracula. There's something else. I'll think of it later. But I watched a whole bunch of the classic Monsterverse. So I had actually seen this one not too long ago, and I was tickled when I saw that sequence in Renfield. I know you said that worked for you as well. The happy laughing. But I enjoyed the 1931 one. I thought they do a nice job, more of a straightforward kind of retelling. But what do you think? Obviously, you have the DVD back there, so I'm taking it you must be a fan.
I am so much of a sucker for the 1930s Universal horror monsters, except for maybe Creature from the Black Lagoon.
The Mummy, that was the other one I watched. I couldn't think of what they were.
I actually routinely go back and watch the trailer they made for the Dark Universe with the over the top, completely out of place music where they introduce you to a world of gods and monsters and they like blend them like it's gonna be the next Avengers or whatever. It legitimately again, I'm admitting something that's gonna make me like completely awful, but it legitimately gave me chills the first time I saw that because I was just so excited for that kind of creativity in movies. And then obviously that I didn't even bother to watch The Mummy. It had gone so far off the wrong direction when that Tom Cruise movie came out.
You weren't missing much, but I will give a plug for the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Oh, absolutely. See, that's why I thought it could work. They turning these classic monster properties into action adventure movies had worked once, maybe
with humor.
twice. Yeah.
But see, that in that case, you had humor on top of what was mostly an action film. And I
Well,
think in
see,
this case, if they would have marketed it differently.
there's room for these characters. It's just that you have to be careful about who the hero is. And I think having what you conventionally think of Van Helsing as the foil to Dracula, but thinking of Renfield as the unsung hero that like comes out and does that, like in the Brendan Fraser movie, he would normally be Benny, but you get like a different take on it. You know, that could have been cool, but just that movie, that character actor who plays Fritz in Frankenstein, like the original Igor, and he plays Renfield. Sometimes I remember his name and sometimes I don't.
I'll look him up real quick.
Let's see if I can remember him before you look him up. Dwight Fry.
Well, you're going fast. Yes, Dwight Fry.
Hey, I did it. So he's incredible. And he always is one of my favorite things. That shot of him on the ship and that creepy laugh he gives. And all the little movements of him crawling towards a woman laying down. Everything in this movie that's horrific is suggested. And yet it's still so effective. And the Swan Lake music from the beginning and the operatic set design with the Transylvanian castle. And just, they're like a part of decoration for Halloween to me, to have these movies and their music and all of the Invisible Man, like that performance of Cloud Rains doing this very dramatic talking, like it's like ambient noise that just works. And the classics for a reason. And I think Bela Lugosi is amazing. And yeah, absolutely.
Well, 61 years later, we got Francis Ford Coppola giving us, and this one's probably mostly known as Bram Stoker's Dracula, even though, let's be honest, they're all based on Bram Stoker's novel. And this one, we had Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, but we also get Gary Oldman there as a very creepy Count Dracula. And I remember this one fairly fondly as well. Francis Ford Coppola is an interesting director who's made a lot of interesting films. This one's a little bit darker, probably, than not that you're right. The 1931 one definitely implies some darkness, but this one is a more show than implication. I know you said that you had recently rewatched this one. Do you have fond thoughts of?
Oh, I love this movie. I don't know what happened. We were talking afterwards last time about like Dracula movies and me thinking I'd seen vampire movies, but I don't know how many of them centered around Dracula. What a fool I was going back and looking at his catalog, realizing that I've like been digesting behind the scenes information for like a decade of like multiple entries, this being one of them. And so, the backstory of pretty much every special effect except for the one blue ring to conceal him is an in-camera, not just practical effect. Like everything was like layered and whatnot and all that. And in this one, Renfield was played by Tom Waits, which amazing cast. I wish he was in there more. And he's eating bugs to survive. And there's always sort of that trend that they've had that it's not. And this is something that's missing from a lot of other vampire properties. The idea that consuming blood is consuming life. It's not about, blood for blood's sake and allegories for what else transmits through blood and whatnot. But Bram Stoker's Dracula is the horniest take on Dracula. It is the probably only now the second bloodiest take on Dracula. And
only now.
Yeah. Like and I think it is also one of the most highs and lows. I think this has even more highs and lows than Renfield, but time will tell on that. I think in Renfield, I don't think will stand the test of time maybe as well as this movie does for what works in it. Even Keanu Reeves, everyone, including Keanu Reeves, admits Keanu Reeves is wrong in that movie.
Well, I mean, at least Francis Ford Coppola didn't cast his daughter. He actually got Winona Ryder this time.
No, but his son did all the special effects. That's why it was so
I
unconventional
mean,
and whatnot.
almost all of his movies have been family affairs.
They
His
are. He did
father
that.
is the one that wrote the iconic Godfather score. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's frequently done. That's just the famous Godfather 3. I still can't help but wonder. I have problems with the story for Godfather 3. I mean, there's
Sure.
no getting around the light incest that ends the Godfather trilogy, but the they had originally cast Winona Ryder to play Michael's daughter, and she had to pull out because of conflicts. So he put his own daughter in there. And
Yeah.
Sophia Coppola, heck
And
of a
that's what led
director.
to this.
Heck of a director.
Yeah.
Not an
Yeah.
incredible actress.
See, I'm curious. I have not watched the Coda cut, the Death of Michael Corleone cut.
I actually, so there are things about the Coda cut that I like. Who knew we were going to get a bonus here? There are
I
things
know,
about
right?
the Coda cut that I like, but there are also things that bother me. One of the only things that I will say is a redeeming quality for me of The Godfather Part 3 is you really get the final definitive take that The Godfather series is a tragedy. It's Michael Corleone. He's a paradox from the beginning. It's his love of family that leads him to sacrifice everything that he wanted to become. But in becoming that thing, he ends up destroying his family piece by piece. And the original Godfather Part 3 really ends with him, this broken old man, sitting out there having visions of the family dinner. And you go back to the original film and that family dinner, and they're all around it. And then he kind of just dies alone out there. They sapped a lot of that out of the Coda cut. There are
Really?
some pieces that they put in with the kind of him and going back with the Catholic Church that I thought were a little bit interesting, but the ending was the best part of Godfather Part 3, and it's like they didn't carry that over when they were fixing
No,
some other
see,
things with Coda. So they're
well,
both flawed, but for different reasons.
you're actually making me think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one with this, because there seems to have been something on Coppola's mind about that concept of religious forgiveness and redemption that it is a thread through both of those movies. And it's interesting to hear that they punch more up on that, because I know the reason for the title of the God. It was never supposed to be called Part 3. He was trying to fight before the movie came out to have it be called The Godfather: The Death of Michael Corleone, because he wanted 1 and 2 to be thought of as a story and then an epilogue.
Yeah.
But this idea that then it's like you fight for the death of Michael Corleone and then you sort of sap the
I mean,
intention away from.
he still dies. The ending just didn't hit me as. I mean,
he still dies. That's your quote on the box.
it just I struggle because like The Godfather is top 10 all time for me.
Oh yeah, the first Godfather?
The first Godfather, and I love The Godfather Part 2 for if you've read the novel, actually, it's fascinating. The Godfather Part 2, half of it is from the novel. They
Okay.
just decided. So the novel is really about a father and a son. You start the beginning of the novel as with a young Vito Corleone. So all the parts with Robert De Niro are
Oh.
actually the things that they had taken out of the novel when they adapted the first one. The parts of Michael's continuing journey in Las Vegas is what they add, because the book ends with, but again, people getting this bonus. If you've read the novel,
Who
they
knew?
make a fascinating choice with the film, because the book and the first film end largely the same way, with Kay realizing who Michael is, but in the movie, it's a surprise. It hits her as oh my God, this is who it is. That is not the case in the book. She knows who he is. And the very last part of the book is Kay going with Mama Corleone to the church to light a candle for the soul of Michael Corleone. Like, I know who he is, and this is my lot in life now. I'm taking over, going with Mama to. So she wasn't a passive victim in it,
Mhm.
and they changed that in the movie, and that's, I think, a driver for what they do with the part they tack on in 2 and with
Mhm.
where they go in 3. But to me, it's a fairly fundamental shift of character perspective.
Hmm. So yeah, in short, Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of the highlights of the Dracula filmography for me. So for you,
Gary Oldman is very good in it. I mean,
annoyingly
he's
good sometimes.
he's very creepy. You're right, though. Keanu Reeves feels like an odd fit. There are some things
Well,
where Keanu Reeves' style works perfectly.
I
Like with John Wick, it works okay.
I will shut
That
up,
just
I promise, in a second.
no,
But
that's
the
good.
thing about Keanu Reeves is he's admitted to doing like 4 or 5 movies in a row, with Dracula being the last of them. And he's like, I could have done more research, more dialect work, more like all that kind of stuff, but they just spray painted his hair gray. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, if those two were the windup, here's the home run pitch. In 2000, we got Wes Craven Presents Dracula 2000. And yes, your eyes do not deceive you if you're watching us on video. That is a young Gerard Butler as Dracula. Wes Craven's name was used to market this movie. Wes Craven had F all to do with this movie in terms of writing it or directing it, which if you went in and thought I was seeing a Wes Craven movie, you went out and said, I just got jobbed by the studio. And you know what? You did. Patrick Lussier is the writer director here. And not only is this movie mortifyingly bad on so many levels, there is a horrendous, and you know what? I don't care if I ruin it. It's 2023. This movie came out in 2000. You shouldn't be watching it anyway. Would be a rare double down for me. Oh, yeah, but not for the reasons you're thinking. Eric's gonna go double up, but not for the reasons you're thinking. As you wind your way through this preposterous story, it turns out Dracula is Judas Iscariot, who's hanging out there, is what turned him into Dracula. They never really explain how that happened per se, but that's why he's got a thing about silver and the church. And anyway, Omar Epps is in this movie. Johnny Lee Miller's in this movie. Christopher Plummer is in this movie as like a really old Van Helsing that nobody realizes is really that old. Gerard Butler, trying to suppress everything Scottish about him, is in here. Jennifer Esposito, Cherry Ryan, Vitamin C, who's probably best known for singing the song Graduation, pops up in this movie. Eric, it's time to just turn your laughter into sonnet.
If I love you for nothing else, it's for introducing this movie into my life. So someone poured, and it's one guy who wrote this, poured the depth of thought into what a creature cursed for eternity and his relationship with Christianity and Catholicism, and broke down an amazing concept for a twist on the origin of that character. And at the same time
betrays
was
it
like,
all by having him crucified in New Orleans on a neon cross.
And then at the same time typed on paper or wrote, walks into City Street, looks up at MTV playing on a billboard and says one word, genius. I loved this movie. This was hilarious for every reason. Like, Danny Masterson, for whatever's going on with him right
Oh,
now.
I
I don't know
forgot
any of
about
that.
that. There's so many like best
They-
of the '90s in here.
Danny Masterson is turned into a vampire. Full spoilers. Sorry, folks. 23 years. Get on it. So
Also, don't watch this movie.
he comes up and he's like, he goes to kill someone and he's like, I'm sorry, man. I just have to. And the guy kills him and his last words are, I said I was sorry. Like,
It's as if Hyde got turned into.
it was so like him being him, and I think they wouldn't let him be him. You know, they got the guy from Scary Movie who's like the first death in the movie from a trap on his coffin, and if that's his natural hair, I've just seen him way too much in my life when that hair's not there anymore, because it looks like a hilarious wig. So, oh my gosh,
it could be.
Gerard Butler deserves an Academy Award for sheer effort. Like,
I mean, they all tried hard, and you know what? As much as we're making fun of Patrick Lussier for his script and stuff, it's been 23 years. We're talking about this movie for an inordinate amount of time. I jumped at streaming clicks on Peacock because I just rewatched it, even though I don't feel like I needed to rewatch it.
Geekly Good says Renfield was a lot of fun. I agree. It was fun. So thank you for commenting. But yeah, Dracula 2000, you want fun. Like, oh my gosh. I don't even know where to go from here, because there were so many things. Like, I ended up like just like screenshotting things and trying to wrap my head around like the level of just pure 2000s and 90s cringe that was on the screen. Like, and oh my gosh, they go exactly where you think they're gonna go when you think of like, we're gonna make a Dracula, but this is the year 2000 now, and they are proud of that. They're so proud of every element of this thing. It's like, and this got 2 sequels.
Yeah, that have none of the original actors and stuff in
I
that went
hope
straight
not.
to video. I just think
I should hope everyone who
I'm
saw
not
this
saying
movie
Wes
watched
Craven
the final
made
product.
nothing but perfect movies, but the fact
Yeah.
that this for a long time got billed, even if rewatching the trailer, Wes Craven's Dracula 2000, you're thinking, oh, it must be Wes Craven's film. He's just a producer, and I bet he regretted it as soon as he watched the cut. It's like, it's too late for me to take my. I don't even want the PGA
Try
credit.
and Alan Smithy it, even though it's not. So, they try and sell this in a box set with Cursed.
Which makes it even worse, because that's actually one of
Wes Craven.
movies.
And it's not his best one.
Well, and I mean, if you would have, so I think I remember seeing this sadly in the theater.
Wow.
But I'm pretty sure it's because I thought it was going to be a Wes Craven movie, and I have to look up the director, and he didn't write the script by himself. Joel Soisson and Patrick Lussier. But I was trying to think. There's a couple other horror. So Drive Angry is one of his films. That is a Nicolas Cage film, like an NC-17 Nicolas Cage film. And then the one that I'll probably always remember, My Bloody Valentine, which was back in that craze of 3D movies.
Yeah, remakes of
My Bloody Valentine 3D with Jensen Ackles.
Nice. You know what?
All those are better.
In the horror community, I was gonna say, like, if My Bloody Valentine has like a reputation for being like not a waste of 3D,
great, but it feels like an Academy Award winner compared to 2000. I will say, if you would have told me the guy that made Dracula 2000 made Drive Angry, I would say that checks, because I intensely dislike Drive Angry, which you're right. Amber Heard, Nicolas Cage. See, we brought it all the way back to Nicolas Cage. It's like 360 degrees of
time as a flat circle.
Nicolas Caging.
It all comes back to Nicolas Cage.
You can get from Nicolas Cage to Dracula 2000 in one move.
Yeah, you can. And oh my goodness gracious. Like, it's just the performances of all the people he's turning. They're
Oh.
so committed. You know, like they bothered to
They're
build a
trying hard.
set sideways so that they could have a character back up against a wall and then like turn the camera so that like on reverse angles the person's climbing on the wall and the person's hair is like on in this shot it's down and in the shot where they're up on the wall their hair is like flat up against the wall. It's there's just so many fun things. And Johnny Lee Miller, man, you know what? He's a really great Sherlock Holmes. I'll tell you that much. But he like I have a feeling he was like, everyone from Train Spotting, we're all getting our big breaks. And this was his. Like,
I mean, that's not even probably the. You have to wonder, like, did Christopher Plummer actually read the script before he got to set? And then he was
no
like,
way.
bro, no.
No way. Someone sat him in a room and gave him a ton of money. And he said, I don't want to be one of those actors that just pays for money. And they told him, like, well, we're doing a thoughtful, like, religious slant on it. It's a thoughtful, it's a
And you're going to
different
be
take.
like a Van Helsing that stayed alive for 300 years by treating
And
Dracula's
family
blood like
and
heroin.
legacy.
Just, doing the heroin shot.
They say that and he goes, what? And they go, no, ignore that part. Just the rest of it. It's fine. It had to be accidental. Like that. Oh my gosh.
Well, if nothing else, it was good for a laugh. So
yeah.
you just got to go out when you
Oh
find
my
your
God.
Dracula.
Look at him. Look at him. He's so serious. He's so in. He's like his chest is exposed and he's like so committed. You can barely tell it's Gerard Butler until someone like tells you. Oh,
Well, and that, I mean, I don't think I realized he was capable of suppressing his accent that much because even like in Olympus Has Fallen, where he doesn't have a Scottish accent, he has kind of that same side mouth way of talking and really deep. What you don't have any of that in here. It's kind of a little bit fascinating. I don't know if they like dubbed him over, but
that would be so interesting to find out. It sounded like him.
it's him.
But
well, that'll do it for this week. If you thought we had fun going through the history of Dracula, wait till next week when we get the history of the Evil Dead.
2 weeks, unfortunately.
In 2 weeks when we do the history of the Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Well, until then, pick your version of Dracula. It could even be Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks. You never know.
Oh yeah.
Dracula, dead and loving it.
And we'll see you at the movies.
See you at the movies.